Welcome to Green and Gold FC. We have a special A-League preview episode. I'm joined by my usual co-hosts, Alex and Andrew Howe, allegedly Andrew Howe, stats genius and guru, and Jason from JFC, the person who brought you A-League bloopers every single year and Harperisms. Yeah, how are you going, Alex?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm very excited for the upcoming A-League season, to be honest. Maybe a bit less so considering that I'm a West Australian Perth Glory fan and we don't really get many nice things nowadays, unfortunately. But, you know, I've been craving this season coming back. It looks like it's shaping up to be a pretty decent one. Lots of new transfers, lots of new stuff to get excited about. And, yeah, very happy to be joined by Jason and Andrew today.
So I'm a Brisbane Roar supporter, you're a Perth Glory supporter. So we'll try and keep this episode from being depressing. We want to be positive. I'm hoping that some of you guys support more successful teams than us. How are you going, Andrew?
Great. Thanks, Graham. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Looking forward to blabbing about this game that I enjoy so much.
And finally, Jay, how are you going?
Yeah, good. Look, unfortunately, I support the Washington Generals, and currently they're on a bit of a losing streak against the Globetrotters. So hopefully, this is the year, fingers crossed. But, I'm excited about the new A-League. Wait, they're still doing the A-League?
Yes, for better or worse.
Oh, that's nice of them.
Okay.
Okay, that's good. I thought it would moved on by now. But good on them. Good on them. Good work, guys.
So with that, we'll ask, I want to ask, because I don't know Andrew or Jason very, very well. And actually, I never asked Alex this question. How did you guys get into the A-League, into your club, or sort of into the A-League, I guess, in Jason's case? Alex, I haven't heard your story.
I got into football in general around, I think, the first game I ever watched of football was the 2006 World Cup, and after that I started following Perth Glory because my dad would take me to the games. I don't really know, just sort of getting into the A-League, I only really sort of got into it like deep in the last few years, to be honest, but I've been going to Glory games since I was a kid, and back then we used to actually win games, which is a distant feeling that I long to get back, but I've been following the club for a long, long time, but only really began to sink my fangs into the meat and bones of this glorious league that we like to call our own in the last few years. And for better or for worse, I guess I could say, maybe more for worse, but I'm invested and I can't turn away, unfortunately.
And Andrew, I believe you started a club called Brisbane Croatia or something like that back in the old NSL days. And I think you're an LA Knight supporter, but yeah, I'd like to hear your story. Probably a lot better and more accurate coming from you.
Sure. Yeah. Look, I'm an old dude. So yeah, late '80s is when I found myself obsessed with the World Game. So I grew up in Sydney in the Sutherland Shire. Cronulla Sharks rugby league fan. I grew up, and can't remember why, but about 20 years old, myself and a couple of buddies went along to an NSL game, National Soccer League game. We had no idea about this. I don't know why we did this, but anyway, it was an Italian derby at Lambert Park in inner Sydney, and I was just hooked from that game. It was just this amazing, different atmosphere that I was used to, going to a rugby league game, every second week, and then suddenly discovering this new dimension of what I probably called wog ball back then. I got quite interested in the games. I was fascinated by seeing these teams I knew nothing about, which had they both had Italian ancestry in terms of the fans, Apia versus Marconi. I wanted to know more about the game, more about these communities. So I, as well as being hooked onto the NSL straight away and suddenly going to games every second week or so, I wanted to know more about the game. I couldn't find much more about the game, and being a stats numbers type person, I started collecting my own data basically almost that year. It's basically almost a second job, keeping the stats on the Australian game, the national leagues, the national teams, the players, and that sort of thing. And yeah, here I am, almost 40 years later, still as obsessed as I was back in 1988.
I read in Joe Gorman's book that you actually confused a lot of the local Croatian market community by starting a a team with the word Croatia in it, and
Yeah.
everyone they
Okay.
all
Yep.
confused. We weren't very good.
Yeah. A group of buddies and I, we formed a team in the local churches comp in Sydney called Miranda, Croatia. So we grew up in a suburb called Miranda, and none of us were Croatian. Hardly any of us could really play the game very well. We had a fun couple of years but we did confuse. I don't know. We a couple of games we went to, we actually had Croatian fans there. I don't know how. Oh no, they must have heard us actually. They must have heard us chanting. We used to have our own Croatia chants, and they must have come along, and hopefully they weren't too embarrassed by our team. Yeah, it's taught me a lot about the world, about different migrant communities and so forth. So as much as that was a bit of a taking the piss thing, I do have grown to do a lot of work with migrant communities, and partly through my day job as well as a demographer, researching, quantifying, and so forth the overseas dimension of the game in terms of participants.
What do you do?
I'm a demographer, so with the
So you
Australian
study
Bureau of
demons?
Statistics.
Is that what you're saying?
Some people would say that. I'm the guy. My team basically says the population of Australia is, the population of Perth is, the population of Southport is. That's my job. But we analyse migration, births, and deaths trends to come up with the official demographic population estimates of the country, including through the census. So yeah, work on the Australian census that we have every 5 years, and recently been helping out with some South Pacific countries in terms of their demographic challenges. Some of our neighbours, such as Fiji, they don't know how many people live in their countries. So it's assisting these other organisations as to get the best from the data that they have to calculate the most important or second most important type of statistic. Football stats the most important, and population stats the second most important. You've got to know how many people there are in the country in your area to know how many people to serve.
Jay, how'd you get into? Well, I don't know if you're into the you make a lot of content about it, as far as I know.
Yeah, look, some Channel 7 executives hit me up one day and they said, we need you to make as much negative content about the A-League as possible. I was like, no worries, I'm just going to start creating highlight reels, and there you go. I've been doing that for a few years, but they stopped paying me a few years back, which is why I don't really upload anymore. But yeah, so that's how I got into it. I've just been watching a bunch of unquoted Anglos just make a fool of themselves every weekend for 20 odd years, and at times I think, what am I doing with my life? I think about it a lot.
Is there a team where you're like, if I had a choice between them winning and being hit by a car, I think I prefer them winning. Like, is there a team you've got a vague attachment to in the A-League?
Look, I'm really into the newly established Solomon Kings, who'll be completing in the OFC comp. But look, I'm just here for good times. I'm just here for the vibes. At the end of the day, I'm just watching it, hoping somebody gets kicked in the groin. And if I do get to see that, that's enough for me. And sometimes I get to see a streaker in a moon boot, chanting, semi-racist slogans towards some referee before they get arrested. That's the A-League for you.
So, okay, I believe you are next to Western Sydney Wanderers, for those who know, but for those at home. So I'll tell you my story. I got into, I played football as a kid, and
What's your position?
my position doesn't exist anymore. I'm a sweeper.
Ooh, yuck.
I'm old.
Were you a fat kid? Because that's where they would chuck him.
Yeah. Well, no, I was really, really scrawny, but I was robbed from most improved 1 year, where all my friends, you have like the kids who are uncoordinated, and they have the kids which are really good in the team, and I was one of the uncoordinated kids, and all the people were chatting and says, "Oh, who are they going to give most improved?" And they all said, "Oh, I think Graham gets it because he was really crap at the start of the year, and now he's slightly less crap." And then we said, "Well, I said, well, I can't nominate myself, so I'm going to nominate the best guy on the team, a really fast guy called Greg." And surely they don't pick him, right? Because you always give it to like encourage, you know, it's a basically participation trophy. But then they actually gave it to the best kid, so he won best player and most improved. So I was closest I got to a football achievement. Still bitter about that to this day. But I watched Iran the next day. I wanted to watch it, but unfortunately, I couldn't figure out SBS when the heck it was on.
So
And
you
so
were watching Hey Hey It's Saturday.
yeah, yeah. So yeah. It's like why is it not on Channel 7? I watched like I think like part of Uruguay in 2001, and I thought, oh, we beat them 1-0. That's easy. We're going to the World Cup. And then I to this day I misremember the newspaper report from the next day. It's like, oh, we lost 3-1. How do we lose 3-1? So like the Cope and me put a 1 in there. We actually lost 3-0. But then we actually made the 2006 World Cup, and that's when I became a convert. And I was like, okay, I want to watch the domestic code. And I was like, oh gosh, which club did Brett Edmonton play for? Oh, none of them. And there's a conscious decision to try and use the Socceroos to try and get people in the A League. And it wasn't the strongest marketing message. They're like, cheer for this team, which happens to be in the same country as the club which the Golden Generation played for. So that wasn't the strongest message. So I had a lot of trouble getting into the A League until basically Barcelona. I was like, okay, you have Ange Postecoglou in Barcelona. This is kind of fun to watch. And then by the time you get to the Asian Cup, you see, okay, yeah, they're the worst player in the Socceroos, but they're playing in the A League. And yeah, I kind of just over time just didn't care about the quality after a while and just got hooked and watched nearly every game. So I want to ask the next question, as a question which was asked on the forum, is sometimes people say people are A-League fans. Sometimes people say they're Australian football fans. Sometimes they say they're fans of a particular club. And I'm really curious which categories you guys fit in. And so here's the test. If the Socceroos were playing your team, so I believe, Andrew, your team's Adelaide United, is that right?
Yeah, I have a soft
Yeah.
spot for the
Yeah,
Reds.
and Jason would go with Washington Generals. If the Socceroos are playing Adelaide United, Perth Glory, Washington Generals, or Brisbane Roar, who do you cheer for? Are you more of a fan of Australian football, or more a fan of your club? Andrew?
I'd go the Socceroos. They're the team I've always, yeah, no, they're my number one team. Yeah, and I've seen Adelaide United win a national championship now, and I haven't seen Australia win a World Cup, so yeah, something else to see before I die. So yeah, to get there to beat Adelaide United, I'd go with that.
You definitely can't win the World Cup if you can't beat Adelaide United. Alex, Perth for Socceroos, who are you cheering for?
I'm actually going to have to match Andrew's sentiment here and cheer for the Socceroos, but that's only for one reason. Now, I'm a devoutly religious man, and if Perth Glory would happen to win a game in any capacity, let alone against the Socceroos, that can only mean one thing, and that is that hell is frozen over, the end times are coming, and that God is about to pass down his judgment on us all. So in order to prevent that from happening, I'm happy to let Perth Glory take the loss on this one.
Now, as a lot of A-League fans, myself included, have sort of pointed to in recent years, and we've pointed to it many times in previous iterations of this podcast, I think a big selling point of the A-League now, at least a big positive in recent years, is the continued production of quality youth talent. We've seen plenty of players go over to the Championship in England, to the Scottish Premiership. Now the MLS and the Belgian Pro League and the Austrian Bundesliga seem to be very good markets for young Australian talents. So I'm interested to know, Andrew, is there sort of a direct correlation between, I guess, the age of a team, maybe, older teams tend to perform better, maybe younger teams tend to sort of not perform as well based on players not having that sort of first team experience? Is there a sort of direct correlation that we can point to in why A-League sides don't necessarily just fill their teams out with promising youth talents?
Yeah, good question. Even though it took ages to come out. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, look, over the last 4 seasons, the average age of A-League players has actually come down. Probably no surprise there, but yeah, 24-25 season, the average age of a starting player was 26.5 years. That was the youngest for any A-League season, and it goes back to I've got these numbers going back to NSL times. That's a lot more typical for the NSL years. We also see that in terms of it's not just more young players making appearances, it's them having more playing time. So if there is a trend to that age coming down. But yeah, your direct question in regards to how does age relate to success, which is a key question. Generally, we find that older teams win more. So, we can put statistical measurements around that, but in terms of correlations and that sort of thing. But look, generally speaking, an older team will win more. Now, that's not a given, obviously. You don't just stack your team with you're not going to obviously stack your team with 50-year-old players and automatically win. The challenge there obviously is to blend that perhaps investment of a young players, successful young players, with the more guaranteed success of older players. And yeah, there are obviously outliers. I guess last year's outlier was probably Melbourne City, actually, who finished right at the top with a very young team. You'd have to give to Coach Rulio Vidmar and the coaching staff there. But yeah, the other old teams from last year in terms of average age were Auckland. Yeah, they surprised a lot of us with an amazing undefeated run in there. Melbourne Victory who also finished in the grand finals as well, the third oldest team. So just from those two examples, Auckland and Melbourne, Melbourne Victory last year, you can see that the older team generally having more success. But yeah, as I say, there are outliers. The previous season we had Central Coast, who was essentially the youngest team coming out on top at the end of the season there. So yeah, it's a interesting to mention the age aspect. Yeah, it really points to the success of a coach if they can make a young team win.
So during the 90s, there was a period of time where age did not predict success. And that obviously corresponded with when we produced some of the best youth we ever had. Could you tell us more about that measure and how close we are to producing a golden generation like that?
I mean, a lot of this, with a lot of stats, you can look at things through rose-colored glasses. What we still found in that era. So yeah, look, mid-90s, the average age of players was closer to 25, and that's gone up to 28 with the A-League era. It was still, generally speaking, the older teams that would win more, and you'd get the occasional outlier like Sydney Olympic in 2002 under Gary Phillips, the coach, winning with a very young side. So look, it's how do young players learn? Well, it's not necessarily by playing against young players. It's if they're playing with and against older, experienced players. So you had the glory era, the mid-90s, the Melbourne Knights players such as Viduka and Brett Emerton coming through in the later 90s. They had some very experienced teammates who a lot of them were imports. And again, it's that blend that the coaching staff need to do properly to get the best out of that young player by playing in an environment with the experience of the older players.
So I want to also ask about another trend which maybe people don't appreciate. I believe you've collected some long-term trends about how many nationalities have been represented in both the National Soccer League and the A-League.
Yeah, it's a tricky, can be a tricky one this time because who am I to define a player's nationality? But yeah, what we can what we can quantify is where players grew up, where players were born, and what countries players have represented. What we've found in the A-League era is in terms of say the number of different countries players were either born in, grew up in, or represented. We're up to 115, I think it is now. Last season, the countries to be added to the list were Lebanon. We had, and with this season, so the 25-26 A-League season kicking off in 3 weeks as we go to air here, we've got our first Peruvian player who signed up with a team. A Peruvian player who's signed for Sydney FC. Will be the first Peruvian to play either in the A-League or in the NSL. So, yeah, putting a number of countries up closer to getting up to almost 120 in the 20 or 21st season of the A-League.
Now, we've heard about Andrew's area of expertise, and we'll move swiftly on to Jason, who's an expert in a lot of things, dare I say. But Jason, I hear you're a bit of a A-League mascot connoisseur. Now, all of our
all the people listening on all platforms here, I think all have the same question on their minds, as do we across the panel. And that is there a set of data that we can point to to effectively decide who is the most attractive A-League mascot out of all of the present ones at all of the clubs currently?
Well, thank you for that question. Look, like Andrew, I do have been collecting data on this topic for quite a long time. Look, we rank it on a whole range of measurements, from bangability to just rugged handsomeness. Look, let's just start off, rip the band-aid off. Sid and Sydney from Sydney FC. No one wants them. They look like they're products of incest. But when you talk about someone like Gary the Gorilla, oh, he's a stud. He's chiseled, he's uncut, he's everything you hope for, and he's packing. So, there's a lot of mascots out there. Melbourne City have 4 mascots, and they all suck. One's a sheep, one's a cow. Awful. I don't know who was behind that decision, but they failed 4 times, and I hope they think hard about what they're doing with themselves. What are some other mascots? You got Marvin the Martian. He's, look, I don't want to sexualize him. Does Brisbane have a mascot? What's going on with Brisbane? Are they still in shop? What's going on? Every time I hear about Brisbane Roar, they're like being wound up by the ATO. What's going on there? You know what? If they're tight on money, Kaz Patafta can sell some of his crypto coin, his F11 coin as it was. If you don't know what it is, Google it, because you'll just be shocked that this managed to get any sort of money out of it. Just a little Ponzi scheme that the lovely Zach Anderson and Kaz Patafta were running for a while. But yeah, who else? Wait, so they're still in business?
Yeah, I mean, I'm apparently cheering from them this year and hoping that they finish higher than Perth. I think that's our main rival.
Perth still managed by David Shirley?
Unfortunately.
Yes.
Yeah, so they'll finish higher than Perth, no question. Okay.
Hear me out, though. Sorry, Graham, I will just interject. If we're on the topic of possible schemes that the Pataftas could use to get more money into the club, on the topic of attractive mascots, could we possibly see a Brisbane Roar mascot OnlyFans? Could that be a possible stream of cash coming into the club that we haven't foreseen just yet?
So, look, appreciate the question. I'm going to completely ignore it and now talk about Douglas Costa's OnlyFans. Why? I didn't realize that OnlyFans wasn't just made for women to flaunt their bodies on, and he had an OnlyFans account, and now Douglas Costa is no longer playing for Sydney FC because he's out on the long-term injury list for unpaid child support. So I just don't understand OnlyFans. But I support women. I support men. I did not march on August 28th.
So, onto a more serious topic. I'll ask this one for
Hey,
Alex.
that was serious.
Onto a more, a less analytic topic. So we've seen cup results every single year. Other teams seem to get better and better. Our first week of the Asian Champions League, when this recording is out, hopefully the second week is better, but it was pretty depressing. We even lost the second tier one. What do we make of the quality? Do you think the quality can be brought back? How far do you think it's dropped, if at all? Is too much made of this? Alex, why don't you get in your soapbox?
I think a lot of it is down to footballing culture in this country, because here's the thing, right, is that I know we all like to point to sort of A-League sides and say, oh, well, look, we've got good players here. We've got household names. We should be able to compete with these sort of mid-table Japanese, Korean sides, stuff like that. But I think there's a deep-rooted issue in sort of youth culture in football here. And look, firsthand, people that have been to Southeast Asia and seen how they train their youth players compared to over here. You got clubs over here where under 16s, MPL and stuff like that will be training, at most 3 days a week. Over there, it's 4 or 5 days a week on top of, 1 or 2 games a weekend, on top of, extracurricular activities and stuff like that. It's a whole different ball game when we compare sort of, I guess, just development in general compared to over here in Southeast Asia. And that's largely why I think we struggle in these competitions. Because here's the thing, is that Australian players are always going to be good exports because we are a country of, sport. I think we're a very sort of sport is deeply ingrained in Australian culture. And that's why I think we have a lot of relatively not overly successful, not world beaters, but relatively successful exports compared to a lot of other Asian countries. But the problem is that until we fix this problem of, developing youth players more seriously and actually sort of putting a higher emphasis on things, we're never going to have any of those world beaters. We're never going to have a Hyunmin Son, a Takafusa Kubo, a Daichi Kamada, even like a Hwang Hee-chan. So when you look at sides like MacArthur getting absolutely battered by Sanfrecce Hiroshima, I'm honestly worried that they will not even beat Hanoi. I'm very, very concerned because what I saw was not only just entirely depressing, but it was just devoid of any sort of life and any sort of tangible effort. And I know that people are going to say, well, Hiroshima are a good side. But look, the fact that we are not catching up to these sides is a very, very concerning sight.
So, Andrew, I want to ask a stats question. My subjective judgment is watching last year, when that was the year where so many places were filled with youth, that the quality of the first 10 rounds dropped pretty dramatically. But I thought once you got halfway to the season, that the youth started to get better and the quality got back roughly where it was in the middle of the previous season. So it got back to normal. So is there any evidence that the quality rises over the time if you have young players, like that the young teams get better over a season?
Oh, look, it's in terms of it being an attractive thing or not attractive thing to watch. Look, it's really subjective, isn't it? And I'm thinking, like, I mean, yeah, this morning of the recording here, we saw the under-20s as national under-20 team play against Israel. That was an amazing game. We had it was a really good performance by our under-20 players against the Italians, who went down in the end. But yeah, it was such a good game to watch. Look, and TV ratings and crowds, I guess, will be an indicator of the success or otherwise of the product as something attractive to watch. Again, whether it's coincidence or not, but the years that we had our highest average crowds were the years we had our oldest players. But yeah, look, everyone's loved seeing a young, exciting player coming up, especially if you've got that local connection with that player. So if you can develop if Melbourne City can develop more of these local Melbourne players, or yeah, look, we'll obviously see success then in terms of off the field, in terms of crowds and that sort of thing too. What I'm really finding fascinating, interesting too, is the number of players with African ancestry coming through. I'm talked before about how I like to quantify this international dimension of where players are born or that sort of thing. A lot of the African players are actually born in Australia. And I'll say African as in, obviously, their parents are at least born in Africa. So it's a bit harder to quantify when we're talking a lot of Australian-based players with African ancestry. Yeah, a lot of players with African ancestry now, not just in our National League teams, but in our national teams as well, that are doing great guns and really good players to watch from the African diaspora.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, the under-20 World Cup last night, yeah, it's a disappointing loss. I know a lot of people will see 1-0, and you could be Germany and lose 1-0 to Italy, or you could be America Samoa and lose 1-0 to Italy. That's kind of not a lot to read into, given the way that Italy have traditionally played. But in this case, I agree. We had some really big chances, some one-on-ones with the goalkeeper, and unfortunately fluffed a lot of them. But yeah, those players, if we do well, they could be really marketable for the Air League. It's a lot easier to market young players, I think, because they're actually playing in the league as opposed to Socceroos who used to play in the league 5 years ago.
Right, I will just jump in here briefly on the under-20s World Cup point. Look, I as someone who watched the game live at 4 a.m. in the morning because I have nothing better to do on a public holiday, I'm very, very proud of this Australian team and what they accomplished in the Under-20 World Cup, but I'm very concerned at the amount of people that I'm seeing falling into this trap of assuming that we are anywhere close to the European standard or the South American standard, for that matter, for youth football, or even the African standard in a lot of examples. Now, look, I know a lot of people will look at 1-0 to Italy and see the highlights and all the chances we created and say, wow, we really did well. You know, we've gotten a lot better as a nation. And true, we have gotten better, but you've also got to remember that this is maybe a third string Italian under-20 side. And I say that as an Italian and as a fan of, Italian youth football. This is nowhere near the full potential of Italy's under-20 sides. In the squad, they don't even have names like Honest Iron or Giovanni Leone, who just unfortunately had an ACL injury, but even the likes of Francesco Camarda as well. There's so many missing pieces to this Italian team. And I know obviously that doesn't say that this wasn't a fantastic performance from the Australian team, because this Italian side had a lot of really good players in it. The likes of Christian Kama, the likes of Mattia Manini. There's a lot of great players in there. And to be honest, for majority of the game, we actually held our own, if not were better than the Italian side. Obviously, there's issues with, our clinicality in front of goal, Daniel Benny having a big missed chance, and several other opportunities that sort of went missing. But in general, I think we need to sort of focus on the standpoint of, okay, this is a great performance, yes. There's lots to build on, yes. But let's not get carried away in this whole narrative of we're getting close, because we're still worlds apart from a lot of these bigger top 10, top 15, even top 20, 30 nations.
All right, I've taken over this interview. I don't like these questions anymore. Transfers and new signings. Go.
Look, I simultaneously love Perth Glory's transfer business, while also I am predicting them to finish in the bottom 3 this season. I think they've done the best transfer business out of any club, maybe outside of Sydney. But I'm predicting them to have a horrible season because they still have David Zrilich as manager, and he is about as uninspiring as a wet paper bag. In terms of other clubs, I think the team that's probably going to be hit hardest by maybe just flimsy transfer business is going to be the Wanderers, in my opinion. They've lost several key players, namely the likes of Nicholas Milanovic, the likes of Oscar Priestman. There's big, big gaps in that squad that I think they haven't necessarily filled that great. Marcus Eunice, they've lost as well. They're seemingly trying to run this whole narrative of, Aiden Hammond being the replacement for Nicholas Milanovic, which is just, no, that's not going to happen. And look, I think they are really going to struggle, to be honest. I think Melbourne City as well have done really, really poor business. They've come off the back of a huge A-League final Melbourne Derby win. And they've backed that up by losing the man who scored the winning goal in the final and replacing him with a Japanese international in his early 30s. So I don't necessarily think that they are looking that promising. They've lost, their midfield has been gutted as well. Matthew Leckie, as much as I love him, his legs are being held together by nothing but Play-Doh at this point. And James Jago obviously retiring, losing Ugarkovic as well. There's a big, big gap there that they haven't really filled to the best of their ability. I don't know. It's been a bit of a weird sort of off season. I can't really point to a lot of teams and say they've had great transfer windows outside of probably Sydney, maybe even the Victory, Glory, and Brisbane. Brisbane, I think, have had a fantastic window. I think they're gonna have a lot of sort of new talking points next season as to positive signs, which is good on your part, I guess, Graham. But as for me, I don't think anything is going to change until we see David Zrilich either take his hands out of his pockets and start coaching, or just leave, I guess.
I feel like there's this time when we got rid of, well, we didn't get rid of, Ange Postecoglou moved to Melbourne because apparently his wife hated the food in Brisbane. But we're always telling ourselves that Rado Vizic was the brains, right? It'll be okay. And Perth kind of had, David Zvilic was the assistant coach and was apparently the brains in Sydney. And you've had unfortunately the same treatment so far. I think for us, our most interesting transfer is not really a player; it's our coach. Uh, I've seen his resume. He's always been caretaker coach. I think this is his first long-term gig. That is so unpredictable, and he's had European experience, so maybe that counts for something good. I really don't know. I think because it's a salary cap league, the coach is more important than the squad. Like, so if you're gonna predict who's gonna win, you should look at the coaches. That's like 80% of it. I'm not saying that Graham Arnold or Tony Popovich or Ange Postecoglou, you could give them an under-8s team and they could win the league. Squad clearly matters a little bit, but I think coach matters more. But I think I've been impressed with some of the under-20 signings from Sydney FC. Obviously, their signings are always good. Alex Grant will basically be a new signing for them, coming back from injury. And then, of course, they have a really nice new left back, Garuccio. So that defense, which was really their main bugbear last year, is starting to look like a bit of an asset. They've got a very strong defensive unit. And they have probably some of our best players in midfield for the under-20s, and Yuli and Ocon. So those have really caught my eye. Esposito's playing for Melbourne Victory too, so he's another one which I'm keeping an eye on, and they look quite strong. But they were the first to get knocked out of the Australia Cup by the first Western Australian team in Sydney. So maybe, what would I know?
Andrew, please,
Hello.
transfers.
Yeah, I'll just whizzing through the teams now. I've got the transfer centre up on my screen here. Look, Adelaide United with Craig Goodwin coming back for his 10th time or something. Will be good to see Goody back. Goalkeeping position at Auckland will be interesting with Paulson gone. Ollie Sale, well, he's had a good, he's had a lot of practice over the last couple of years at Perth Glory. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out with a more experienced defence in front of him. Brisbane Roar, as you say, Graham, Mike Valkanis, I guess, the coach is a notable debutant there in terms of important personnel for the Roar. The Mariners haven't really recruited many players. Be interesting to see how Caceres goes at MacArthur, moving over there from Sydney. And Melbourne City, look, they've got a backbone of some really talented young players, so they haven't really added too many players in the off season. Victory's got a stack new players. Yeah, so look, and you've mentioned some other teams there as well. So it seems to be a quietish off season. But yeah, the injection of the Western United, or theoretically, hopefully the best of the Western United players into other clubs, she'll hopefully improve the overall standard of the league, and importantly give some players who's perhaps in limbo a few weeks ago a good opportunity to keep themselves busy and playing over the next several months.
I believe there are still at least 6 teams that haven't folded in the A-League. Would anyone like to, their 2 cents, their whole reputation on who they think's going to finish in the top 6? Now remember, if you do get this wrong, everyone on the internet's going to call you an idiot.
I'm willing to put not only my career on this podcast on the line, but I'm willing to place a bet right now that if Perth Glory finish inside the top 6, I will go skinhead. I will go skinhead. I'm very confident that will not happen. Let me add some more depth to that. If Glory make the top 6 without sacking David Zvilic, if David Zvilic stays at the Glory and they make top 6, I will shave my head all over. I will go skinhead Rooney if Glory make top 6 with David Zvilic at the helm. That is not going to happen, because either one of 2 things is going to happen. Either one, Zvilic sticks it out and we finish in the bottom 3, or 2, we sack Zvilic and we get someone in like John Aloisi and he comes in and steers the ship to a top 6 finish, which probably won't happen anyway. But to get onto the actual top 6, the meat and potatoes, dare I say, I think there's a lot of sort of teams that are on the verge of maybe even being in there that I haven't put inside my top 6. I will give credit to Newcastle. Fantastic Oz Cup run so far. I think they've looked very promising in some areas. Mark Milligan's doing really well with them. How does that translate to an A-League season? Not too sure. Their squad isn't the best, so we'll have to see. Adelaide, they've been gutted with some of the recent transfers, but I do think that there is a bit of life in that squad. Especially you look at the likes of Craig Goodwin coming back. You look at the likes of Luka Ivanovic, Panakikianis being really promising as well. Taladera possibly having a big season coming up for him. So it's tough to sort of see where they stand at the moment. Brisbane as well, I think, are going to be another really interesting watch. I think they've got a good squad, maybe a bit lacking in some areas, but I think they've done very smart transfer business. As for the Glory, the Phoenix, and the Mariners, the less said, the better.
Yeah.
Sixth place, I have the Wanderers. I think there's a lot of gaps in the squad. I don't like their transfer business, and I think Stajic is getting very stagnant with his ideas. He always has been stubborn, but I think he's actually getting to the point where he's getting stagnant, which is not good. I think they need to make some changes. MacArthur, I've got in 5th. A bit of a weird one, to be honest. I don't know why exactly I'm putting them this high, outside of the fact that, 1, I have a feeling, and 2, none of the other squads in the league look that great, or at least the squads outside of the top 6 don't really look that great. I think maybe there could be some good signs for MacArthur this season. 4th, I'm going with Melbourne City. I'm predicting a big drop-off this season. Their midfield has been absolutely decimated. I think they're missing a few signings. Look, in all honesty, I don't think their squad is that bad at all. I just think that the sides in the top 3 have done better business. I don't like the look of Melbourne City's front line. I think it leaves a lot to be desired. 3rd, I'm going to go with the Victory, having seen them play twice down in Perth in the regional tour of WA. I think they look solid. Arthur Dillis is working on some really good things here, and a lot of the depth players look very, very strong. You know, guys that won't be starting all the time, the likes of Jing Rees, Keegan Jelicic, maybe even guys like Louis Dorigo. They all look really, really good. Sebastiano Esposito is a great inclusion, so I want to see how he does as well. So yeah, very good squad with some good young depth as well. Second, I'm going with last season's minor premiers, Auckland. The only reason I'm not putting them in first is because the side ahead of them has just had the best transfer window outside of any other A-League club, like I said, outside of maybe Perth and Brisbane. But Auckland, I think goalkeeper is going to be a huge problem for them. I think Paulson single-handedly won them a few games last season, so without him, and with Ollie Sale, namely, you're going to have a few problems there, in my opinion. The rest of the squad looks fine. Not too much sort of over-the-top transfer business, so, you know, just standard stuff for them, really. In first, I've got Sydney. They've somehow turned the biggest problem area in their team, that being their defense, into their biggest strength in the space of one transfer window, which is fantastic. You look at the likes of... Look, goalkeeper might be a bit of an issue, I will say. I don't know how good Gus Hoofsloot is going to be this season, but you look at Garuccio in at left back, you look at Ryan Grant in at right back, you look at a centre back pairing of Tisserind and Alex Grant. You know, you've got some great midfield players in there. You got Quisper, who's just signed. You know, that new Spanish striker that they just brought in. I forget his name, apologies. But look, even losing players like Segicic, I know is going to suck, but they've made some quality inclusions, so I really can't look past them. I think they're going to win the league. I won't say comfortably, because nothing in the A-League is ever comfortable, as anyone who's watched this league for a while would know, but I think they'll win the league, and I think they'll win the finals at the end of the season as well.
Yeah, I've actually got the identical top 4. So I think there's 4 teams in the A-League which don't make the salary gap completely redundant, right? You got Sydney FC, Melbourne City, Melbourne Victory, and Auckland FC. So I think the top 4 is going to be those in some order. And I think probably Sydney FC, this time it's a much more balanced squad than last year. They had they're too top heavy last year, lots of attacking talent, though really weak at the back. And so they felt they underperformed because they just looked at all the stars in their team sheet, but ultimately I think they were a poor team. This year, if Garuccio and Grant stays fit, that's a really, really strong team. And Ocon is an incredible talent. Can't sing his praises enough. Let's see how it goes in the A-League. So Sydney's number 1, Auckland number 2. They haven't changed too much, and they're a very strong team. Then number 3, I would say probably Melbourne Victory. I think Esposito is a key signing. adds a bit more solidity at the back, even though he's quite a young player. And of course, they've got some fantastic talent up front. Then, of course, number 4, Melbourne City. Mostly, I think the drop-off's going to be they've just lost a lot of players, and their young players aren't improving quickly enough to replace the ones they have. So I think they may be a year away from being on track. And then probably your 5th and 6th, I'm going to go maybe Newcastle Jets. I like the look of what Mark Milligan is doing down there. And just as pure hopium, I'm going to go Brisbane Roars number 6.
Andrew, as Alex is just struggling with his microphone and other elements of his life, I'd like to hear your top 6 predictions. And you don't have to put on an accent, but if you were going to put on an accent, what accent would it be?
Good. I like a deep South US accent, but I won't embarrass myself.
That's a shame.
I'll give us a statistical answer here. So look, based on the squads, and discussion earlier about how older teams win more, I'm going to give you the sixth oldest team. So the 6th, based on current squads, which are not finalised. Melbourne City is the 6th oldest team, so I've got them coming in 6th. As much as they did have a young team last year, that they've snared a couple of more experienced players. As a Japanese player, Kanamori and Samuel Cyprian's come back. Both experienced there. 5th oldest team is Perth Glory, so I'll go Perth for 5th spot. Scott Wootton and then Josh Ridson and Taggart up there. Old experienced players might help them get into the top 6 for the first time for a while. The 4th oldest team is Auckland, so to continue their successful debut season with Sakai and Francis de Vries up there as the experience, a couple of the more experienced players for Auckland. And the 3rd oldest team is the Wanderers. Now, Costa Barbarouses is basically almost the oldest player in the competition, but he's joined the Wanderers there. He didn't really look to be slowing down. He's fairly successful season last season, really, considering the team he was in. Lawrence Thomas, Josh Brillante there, helping with their experience. The 2nd oldest team, so runners up to be Melbourne Victory. Juan Mata, it'd be interesting to see how he goes there with the transfer down south. And the oldest team, so the team is going to finish on top of the ladder, Macarthur FC, led by Damien De Silva, the oldest team and oldest player in the league, I think. Marta's the oldest, but I'm sure De Silva will get more of a run. Matt Yerman and Luke Bratton, the 2 other senior citizens of the league, will help Macarthur finish on top of the ladder.
Well, I think we'll do a stats competition. So we have some buzzers. So Alex, the way you press your buzzer is you lift your hand. Can you do that for us?
I know that you're planning a shit for people.
Okay, so I don't know if everyone heard
Because
that.
of Pissant Town, this club will never win anything.
And Jay, that's your
Pissant Town.
Okay, so shoot ahead.
Okay, I just had to come up with these on the fly, but in terms of A-League men players, excluding double barrel surnames and multi name surnames, which player has the longest surname out of all the 1,621 players to date?
Because of Pissant Town, this club will never win anything.
All right. I believe that is, I could be wrong, it's either Apostle Stamatopoulos, who's now in Scotland, or Dan Hall of Adelaide.
Very good. I'll take your first answer, Apostolos Stamatopoulos.
Oh, yeah, that's what I said.
Yes, Stamatopoulos. Equal first with Kristen Constantinopoulos and Nathan Constantinopoulos, with Jonathan Aspropotomides second, and Tasmir Ducatis and Anthony Pantasopoulos equal third, or third longest.
Oh, well done, Jason.
Do you got any hard questions, Andrew?
I like that. All right, so We're going to just go in my database. I was going to ask. Well, I still will, but I mean, it's not really a fun topic. How many A-League players are now not with us?
Isn't dead.
God.
Closest answer wins, as in dead, that I know of.
Because of a pissant town, this club will never win anything.
Okay. All right. My favorite topic, death. So we've got Jordan Simpson. We've got, I believe it was Riberino or something of that effect at Newcastle of cancer. And we had Liam Miller also of cancer from Perth and Queensland and Melbourne City. I don't know. Did he play for Perth? But anyway, Liam Miller. Who else is dead?
There were
Alex,
two
you
others.
have a guess?
You got to give a number. This is part of my
Well,
plan.
it's close. Yeah, look, it's just close. So let's
All
not
right,
dwell on
I'm
it. 'Cause it's
gonna guess and hope that he forgot someone. I'm gonna say 4.
I know that
Okay,
you're
the-
planning a shit throw people.
5 in total. Yeah, so you mentioned you got the 3 there, Jay, and then there was Stephen Laybutt, who it wasn't too long ago that Stephen passed away, former Socceroo,
Oh,
and a more obscure player, Masato Kudo. Now I'm gonna have to Google him now, but yeah, he died quite young, about 4 years ago. So yeah, 5 A-League players, as far as I'm aware, have now passed on.
There was another one, but I don't know if he played in the A-League. Sorry. There was a Solomon Islands guy. Not Henry Farudu.
Okay.
Clemens Menapai, I think his name was.
Oh, okay, a former NSL player. He
Yeah,
played
he
in the
passed.
NSL.
Anyway,
right.
I'm just saying this because I think it's good to remember that death doesn't escape any of us. And I'd just like to say that message directly to you, Vince Ruggery, if you're watching.
My God.
And
This
let's
episode's making a dark turn.
Now, that was a great question. You got what other morbid stuff you got for us, Andrew?
now a very complex part of my statistical database is players who are related. Now, which family has 3 A-League men players and 1 A-League women player, and their father was an NSL player? Do we know the surname of this family? Oops.
I know that you're planning a shit throw people.
I'm gonna say Popovich.
Starts with that letter. There wasn't
Ooh.
3 Popovich brothers, though.
3 brothers. Hang on.
Wait. You haven't put your hand up.
Because of a pissant
And I reckon
town,
they
this
all-
club will never win anything.
So you said 3 brothers, which made me think of the Edwards clan over at Perth. But I don't think that's the answer. And I also had a comedic
not.
option of saying Travis Dodd and Carl Dodd, but that moment's gone.
Yes, there's been these 3 players actually all came on at the same time for Newcastle. I remember, if I remember clearly. Anyway, it was the Petratos brothers, Dimitri Costa and Maki.
Wait, there's a third Petratos?
Yeah, there's a Maki Petratos.
Had a sister?
And they have a sister, Panagiotis, yes. Or Panagiota, yes. And their father, Angelo, played for Sydney Olympic back in the late 90s, I reckon, early 2000s.
So we are going to need a 4th tiebreaker question, since neither of you were able to get that.
Okay. Oldest A-League player. Who was
To
that?
go on the field or just to be on the
to
squad?
appear on the field, to make an appearance.
Oh God.
I know that you're planning a shit throw people.
I'll have a crack at it. Since I don't know, I'm just gonna take a stab in the dark. I'm gonna say Liam Reddy.
You got it.
That's good.
Oh,
He
Alex
was
is the winner.
40,
Jason. Oh,
Well done.
41 years, 146 days old, but still
Okay.
4 years younger than Melissa Barbieri, who's up for her 30th or something National League season this season for Melbourne City and the A-League women.
Yeah, play Melissa. My lord.
4 A-League players have been aged 40 or over: Liam Reddy, Romario, Ante Chovic, Thomas Sorensen, and Brad Jones, who made his last appearance on his 40th birthday.
Very good.
Well
Very
done to the
good.
old boys.
So thanks so much for joining us, Andrew, Jason, and Alex. Till next time, it's bye for now.